Hey everybody, Sean Hamill here with another episode of Origins. Have a gosh, you're a jack of all trades. I mean, you really don't have one thing that you do. You kind of do everything. But Steve Parker with Profitable Dentist Magazine. Steve, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's good to see you. It's good to see the background too, with all the covers of the magazine behind you.
Sean, thank you. Yeah, we do. We actually have our office is spread way out. So I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, we moved, and I said, instead of putting art up, let's put some covers up. So we have about 36 years worth of covers. If we did a walk around, you would see every hallway, every meeting room looks like these are usually the newest ones, but there's probably 100 hanging around the office just like this. So yeah, it
Well,
reminds us what we do every day.
Well, that's awesome. And I really appreciated the opportunity of getting to meet you earlier this year in Kentucky. We were at Dr. Larkin's event. Me and my good buddy Chris Phelps were hanging out, and it was really great to get to connect with you. And then, talking to Paula, talking to you, all of the overlap that you kind of find when you meet new people in dental. You guys have 300, 400 connections you didn't realize or know about. Dentistry is huge, but it's tiny, as everybody knows. But it's just been really great to learn more about what you guys are doing, and obviously you with your past, and like I just kind of gave you the quick rundown of where you started in school, then moving into owning a lab, then moving into consulting, and then now you have this highly sought after and respected magazine, Profitable Dentist, that you're doing. How did that all come to be? How did you get started in dental? Did you always aspire to have a dental magazine when you were a kid? Like how did this all start for you?
So, Sean, first of all, thanks for having me on. Awesome question. Um, and in full transparency, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So, um, and part of that, I'm only halfway being facetious. I like to do new things. I like to learn new things. I go all in on the things that I do. I've never, well, I was about to lie to you. I was an employee for a year and a half one time for a company that I sold to somebody. And part of the deal was, you're an employee. And they wanted 5 years. I wanted 5 minutes, and it ended up being a year and a half. And not that I didn't enjoy it. There's part of me that liked the just somebody else taking care of everything. Um, but I think I like that. So, very much like the dental world, a lot of people who come in every day and get hammered being a dentist, they think, man, wouldn't it be great to work for, this big DSO and just kind of punch in, punch out, make a big bonus at the end of the year and go, watch my kids tennis practice. That's a great thing. That's awesome. But there are things that you give up with that, and those happen to be the things I like. So I did a lot of things, owned a lot of different businesses. I owned actually a utility power company. I owned energy storage company. I owned a telecommunications infrastructure company. When I sold that, once you get out of like when the giant build out of these things, these are actually this is a radio. This is not a phone. This is a radio. And I was around and involved in infrastructure when these became hot in the late 1990s. And we went from building, 1,000 sites a year, cell sites a year, to building 10,000 a month. And it will wear you out all over the country. So I did that, enjoyed it, learned a lot, literally did things that they still do in the industry today. I invented things. And mostly I invent them because I don't know how to do it. I don't want to know how to do it, but I know there's got to be a better way to do it. So I ask a lot of stupid questions, and people say, gosh, I don't know why we do it that way. Well, suddenly we do something, we're doing it different. And Verizon has, there are procedures in telecommunications manuals with my name on them at Verizon, which is a joke because I literally can't do anything that's in there. But I helped bring that along. So after that, the natural next progression was dentistry.
Of
And I
course,
sold that
naturally.
company. Yeah, I mean, you see the connection. So I sold that company, and I had a good friend from college whose wife's a dentist, and he said, "You know what you need to do?" I still give him grief about this. He said, "You need to start a dental lab." He said, all I know is they all seem to be screwed up. Sarah, his wife, Sarah hates them all and they're too much money. And if anybody can get their arms around it, figure it out, it's you. So I spent about probably the first year and a half. I bought some dental labs. We aggregated them. I used to say it's like trying to herd cats. Um, and it's like the DSOs in the early days. Every dentist wants to be a part of this organization as long as they're like the president and CEO. And that was the tough part. And then, some lawsuits came along and dentistry got better and DSOs kind of evolved. But I got into it through dental labs. And where I think it helped me was dentistry is a very unique business. My background is finance and management from Indiana University. Go Hoosiers. And I had these assumptions when I came into the dental world that dentists kind of understood what they were doing on the business side. I mean, they're dentists, for crying out loud. They went to college for 8 years. They had to have learned something, and they're running their own practice. And what I found out was they don't at all. So I would go through this period in the lab where I would have some doc who had a beautiful practice, great location, is just humming along, is buying people dinners and lunches and taking him, the staff to, I don't know, taking the staff to Bermuda for some kind of a trip, doing all these things, and they're within about 50 cents of bankruptcy. And they would call me in and say, hey, sorry, but I can't pay my lab bill and I owe you lots and lots and lots and lots of money. So I would say, listen, I'm not going to kick you to the curb, but I don't understand it. And let me look under the hood a little bit and figure it out. And there were just so many simple things they were doing. I mean, Sean, I went into one practice that had 900 grand worth of AR. I mean, this person gave away a third of their production for 3 or 4 years, and just didn't collect on it. And when I said, I don't understand this, they had no idea what I was talking about. I go into practices that the office manager had stolen $300,000 or $400,000 over the last 2 years. Really simple things that, any first year person at IU Business School would have learned, but dentists don't. They went to dental school to learn to be a dentist, came out, and the first thing you do is hire somebody to run the business part so you can be the dentist. And so and I knew that if they were paying their lab bill, they weren't paying their rent. So next month they're going to pay their rent and then they're going to skip their lab bill. So I kind of got into consulting that way. I coincidentally live in the same town as Dr. Woody Oakes, who is a legend in dentistry. And if you're a dentist over 50 years old, you used to get our direct mail pieces about every 10 days. We've sold 1 million, or we've given 1 million hours of CE. We've sold thousands and thousands and thousands of DVDs and CDs and courses like that. And Woody was struggling, number one, with his health. But number two, he was really struggling with this business. Still did a lot of DVDs. When I bought the business, we had a warehouse full of CDs and DVDs. We were still printing a magazine that we lose money on every time we print it. Printing, it might surprise you, printing and mailing is really expensive. I mean, it's hard to do. So I came along to help with that. In the meantime, Woody said, well, let's get my consulting thing back going. We did we turned some practices around. What I found was the majority of my time was keeping practices out of bankruptcy. And it was a lot of work. And we would literally, a year later, they're right back where they started. So, I knew that was a bigger putt than I can make. So I got out of the consulting. I have moved everything that we have for the Profitable Dentist to what we call digital first. So we still do some print. We still do live meetings. We have retired our Destined Spring Break Seminar, which is, ironically, it's where Rick Workman got the idea for Heartland sitting on the patio at our Destined Spring Break Seminar. He looked across the room and he's told this story many, many, many times. Dr. Workman is just a good human being, smart guy. Um, he said, I looked across the room at 1,200 dentists who love being dentists, but they hated the business. They hated running their business. And at the time, he only became a dentist because his dad told him that farming is hard. You need a backup plan. And dentistry was his backup plan. And he said, I love doing the business part. He got together, talked to one person. They picked a number and he said, I'll do this. I'll take care of the business of your practice. You pay me a percentage of the growth. And that was Heartland practice number one. So good things came out of those. They just, my middle name is Practically Profit. So, if you're going to be profitable, don't do things that lose money. And these big events lose a lot of money for a lot of groups. Printing magazines lose a lot of money for a lot of organizations that try to print them. So we've evolved to where most of what we do is digital first. We reach a much bigger audience. We can help a lot more dentists with a lot more content, and we can nurture a lot more creators, people like yourself, who, if it was 20 years ago, Sean, you'd be coming to me, you'd need a budget. I mean, you'd need a lot of budget. You need 20 or 25 grand to even be in the ball game. Now you can do a podcast. You can reach a heck of an audience. We'll share this. You just couldn't do that 10, 15 years ago. So that's kind of how we got here. And the past 3 years, we took COVID as an opportunity. It's a good excuse to stop doing things we probably should have stopped doing 5 years earlier. It was a good excuse to start doing things that we were going to be doing 5 years, 10 years anyway. So it created that opportunity. Again, a lot of hard work, condensed amount of time, but we're to the point where these things are starting to take off, and we just get a lot of traction, know a lot of good people, and I love dentistry. Dentistry is a cottage industry. It's small business, and I love small business, and I love small business owners, and I love to help them get over usually that one little thing they just struggle with. And then suddenly the world changes and they can't understand, what the magic was. And usually it's simpler than they think.
So is Profitable Dentist just kind of a place for you to amass knowledge around the insufficiency or the inefficiency that you saw in dentists, like as a whole? I mean, I assume doing the consulting, you probably saw the same problems, just like when I come in, we typically see the same marketing problems. So was that just you compiling all of them into a magazine? Is that how it started?
Yeah, I could, if I wanted to kind of be, smart aleck about it. And most consultants will tell you the same thing. You can look at a practice, and I can tell you 4 of the 5 things that are a problem without even walking in the door. They're very, very, very common. So a lot of consultants, that's all they're doing is addressing simple things that, Sean, you and I could do. I have 5 kids. We finally kicked them all out of the house. They're grown. I mean, we were thinking of doing it when they were like 14 or 15, but apparently there's rules about that. But all of our kids are in their mid to late 20s. But the things that they do are very, very, very common. And trying to get that across is the difficult part. But dentistry, there's just so many common things. And it's really simple things for maybe you and me. Any one of my kids who went to business school as a freshman could literally tell you what they could look at a P&L and a balance sheet and talk 5 minutes with the dentist and say, well, yeah, this is what's going wrong. And I'm, halfway through my freshman year in Indiana. Now, if you were going to like Ohio State or Michigan, you probably need to be a senior, maybe a little postgraduate.
Wow.
Indiana halfway through your freshman year.
Shots fired. I like it. What would you say is the most common thing or the most detrimental thing or maybe the easiest thing? That one question turned into 3 questions. I apologize. But let's say, what's the easiest thing that a doctor could know? I may need a consultant.
Yeah, they could. So the number one thing is they can understand that they own the business. That's it. You own this thing, period. So, if money's missing, and my good friend Roy Shelburne will tell you, Roy went to jail because he was doing Medicaid work, and his office manager was signing these things and doing them wrong. Well, when the law shows up, they don't say, "Oh, it was her fault." They say, "Oh, it's your fault," and you're the guy who goes to jail. Now he speaks on it, and he has a great business teaching other dentists how to stay out of jail from signing paperwork that they don't even understand. Employee theft. First thing that most dentists buy is a rubber stamp to give to somebody that they didn't hire them out of dental office manager school. They hired him because, they were at the front desk at the chiropractor's office, and they were really cute. So now you're going to let them handle your $1.2 million, and you're going to give them a stamp where they can just stamp a name to it. And you're going to let them pay, credit card bills, like the Target bill. I've had offices that were paying 4 Target bills. I walked in there and I would say, "Why do you have 4 Target cards?" "Oh, we don't. We just have one to buy, things for the office, paper towels, pens, that office supplies." And you look and they're spending $8,000 or $10,000 a month at Target on somebody's Target credit cards. It's not the dentist. So as the owner, you need to say, "Okay, this is my money, my business. It stinks. I'd rather be prepping crowns. But what I'm gonna do on Fridays is do simple things." I had a business that ran tens of millions of dollars through it, and every Friday I would get the stack of the mail with invoices. I would pull out checks, and I would hand to my CFO and say, "Bring me the supporting paperwork for this." It could be an invoice, it could be whatever it is, and she had to have it back in about 3 minutes. I can tell you, in your dental office, if you try to do that and your office manager says, "That's going to take a lot of time, and I've got this going on, and I've got to turn this off, and I've got to do all those things," I know some good people in this industry who would tell you you're probably getting stolen from. You're trying to arm's length own your business. And so there are lots, show up on time. I had one dentist that would show up about 8:15, just because it took a while. He stopped to get coffee. The staff's taking care of the hygiene patients anyway. And I said, "Here's what you're going to do for the next 30 days. You're going to be the first person in and the first person or last person to leave. So if you have a huddle," "Well, we don't have a huddle." "Okay, you're going to have a huddle. You're going to be there at 8 or 7:45, even if it's 5 minutes of who's on the schedule today. Start somewhere." He generated $50,000 more production that month and did it for 3 straight months. That's $50,000 a month just for showing up, being the first person in, and owning your business, not letting other people take care of it. Because I can tell you, if it blows up, they find another job. You're filing bankruptcy. So there's a lot of details like that you can tweak, but fundamentally, dentists just weren't taught what owning the business means. They're taught how to do dentistry and basically show up, do dentistry, and everything works out. But they're not taught that you're also the owner. It's a different skill set, different mindset, different approach, different things you've got to learn. And if you do that part well, you'll be a great dentist owner. Not just a dentist, but you'll be a good dentist owner. So that's what I see is probably the number one thing is dentists just don't seem to realize they own it. And if stuff goes bad, if somebody forgets to make those 941 deposits, they're not coming after the office manager who forgot to do it. They're coming after you, and you never even heard of a 941 deposit. You're not even sure what the heck it is, but the IRS now wants $86,000 from you forever. And you were thrilled that you were, you've made 50,000 this year. Now you're 34, 35, 36 behind. So that's the stuff I used to see every day in consulting, every day. And what I would do is fix it, get them out of that, and they'd be right back in it some other way 6 months or a year later. So
is it just a lack of systems?
A lot of systems, a lot of business systems. It's funny because there are tons of sort of left brain, protocol driven clinical systems. And Sean, that's funny. That's a great question because during COVID, I would get emails. I mean, there are days I would get hundreds of emails, and it would say, my state is going to close down my office. I can only see emergency patients. Is there a book I can read to figure out what to do? Do you have a list, a protocol list? Do you have in fact, I had people that would say, do you have a DVD on how to run my business during a pandemic? Well, no. I mean, maybe somebody did one in, when was the Spanish flu? Like 1918. Maybe
Something
somebody
like
did
that.
a DVD back then. But the dentist mindset is, okay, if there's a problem, let me pull out the textbook and figure out how to do it. Let me go online and try to figure out how to do it. There wasn't any. So for them to kind of put on their right brain, spatially thinking manager hat, was very foreign to them. I always say, like, a dentist manages by protocol. An entrepreneur manages by what's in front of them right now that needs addressed. And it may not be what you planned. It's a difference between planning and strategy. It may not be what you planned at all, and you got to be okay with that. And if you're going to wig out because it's not going according to plan, I promise you, in your career at some point, I mean, I don't think we have another pandemic on our hands, but when stuff like that happens, we started doing. We were having webinars, weekly webinars with 2,000 and 3,000 docs on, and my message to them was, "You've got an amazing opportunity here. Yes, it sucks, but you're getting some PPP money and some things like that. So, and you need to, number one, be communicating with your staff because they're more scared than you are, and you need to, if you're keeping them on payroll and you're taking the PPP money, bring them in and do the stuff that for the last 5 years you said, yeah, we can't really update our software, we just don't have time. Yeah, we can't switch out this piece of equipment, we don't have time. Yeah, we can't write these systems and protocols, we don't have time. Well, guess what? You have the time. So the ones that came through were the ones who worked on their business during COVID shutdowns when they couldn't work in their business. So, I know that's a long answer to a little question, but there is no silver bullet in dentistry that says do this. And docs really want that. They were trained that way. Is, with an implant case or with an endo case, don't use the file more than twice. It's that simple. Problem solved. You'll never have any problems with an endo again. As an entrepreneur, man, nothing like that exists. It just doesn't. So,
Yeah, well, for sure, and it's kind of how I feel sometimes talking about the story-based approach to marketing. Like it's so simple, but it's really hard at the same time. It's really difficult, and sometimes the answer to a doctor's problem is a lot easier than they think. Almost, it's so simple that they just think, well, that can't fix it. Um,
it's surprising to me they don't go ahead and ask a question because I wanted to talk about story-based marketing.
Yeah, for sure. I was just curious. I mean, you've been doing this for 2 decades almost. So, and I know, like you'd said, understand that you own the business. But if, let's say, a new doctor is listening to this and they're, moving into a startup or they're doing an acquisition, and we have a varied audience of folks, but what would you recommend in terms of, do you have a book or do you have a resource that you recommend for somebody to start to get that initial push into the knowledge they need as an entrepreneur? Do you have a favorite book that you recommend?
My very favorite book, I happen to keep behind me, and I would encourage every single prospective dentist and entrepreneur, is The E-Myth. All right. It basically is the entrepreneur myth. It is, I don't even know when this was written. This one's signed by Michael Gerber. I probably got this in the 80s. 1995. So this basically tells you why entrepreneurs fail. And have you read it?
No, it's on my unending list.
Short, sweet, easy. So what happens, the E-Myth is, and he talks about a plumber, and he says, you're you work for Joe's Plumbing, and you're the best plumber that Joe has working for him. And, you'd like to make a little more money. And there's people who, they know how good you are, your buddies that work with you. And what's the first thing they say to you? You should start your own plumbing company. Well,
Right.
suddenly you start a plumbing company, and in about 2 years, you're broke. You lost your 401k that you got at Joe's. Your wife's mad because the second mortgage you took out, that money's gone. And now you're going to go work back for Joe again. You're a really good plumber, but being an entrepreneur requires an entirely different skill set. It requires an entirely different approach. And that's what I see coming out of dental school. In fact, I speak a lot at dental schools, and in the past 2 years, I've changed my approach. In fact, I worked at a couple dental schools with some docs that I was doing the 4th year business program. Okay. Because, I went to Indiana, so I know tons about business. It's awesome. And I said, here's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about business. Number one, I can't do it justice. And number two, it's so different for everybody in here. But here's what I want to talk about. I want to explain how dentistry evolved, and when, Dr. So-and-so here graduated in 1979, it would be he, because 97% of dentists were he's. He had two options. He could either start his own practice, or he could become an associate and be underpaid for 3 years until he got mad. And, the old doc loved it because now he was only working 2 days a week and this guy wasn't getting paid. That all blows up and he could lose money for 10 years. And that was his career path. I am a big fan of, I'll just say, like University of Heartland. I always say, here's what you guys have. You can go work for the University of Heartland. Now, Dr. Rick Merkman will give you a big fat paycheck, and he will teach you. He'll give you 3 years to pay off your student loans. You don't have to worry about finding a patient, hiring a person, figuring out taxes. But if you pay attention while you're there, they will show you how to run a business. Now, you can complain about a lot of things about Heartland, but you do not get to be $1.5 billion a year organization by sucking. So they're doing something right. So pay attention to that. 3 years from now, then decide and say, you know what? Like I said, I would make a terrible employee. I know I've got very good friends who are dentists who filed bankruptcy twice, work for a DSO with 150 offices, and, brings home $1.2 million a year. One of their best practicing docs. Doesn't worry about a thing. He can work 5 days if he wants. In fact, I know another guy that worked 3 days a week. One of them was Saturday, and he brought home $1 million a year working for a DSO because everybody wanted to come on Saturday. So take the time to learn that, because you have that now. 2 decades ago, you didn't have that opportunity. Or hook up with some of your dental school friends, 53% of which are women now. Group of you get together and say, hey, why don't we all get together, start, we'll either buy a little practice or group, or we'll start our own thing. We'll hire so-and-so's husband, who's an MBA, to run it. We'll hire so-and-so's wife to be the director of operations. And suddenly we got a 6-doc practice that is now we can, worth something and we can exit. You have so many opportunities to find where you fit, work well, and don't have to learn about it 3 years from now when you're waking up at 3 a.m, in terror and don't know how to find that $86,000 that the IRS wants for these 941s you don't understand. So I'm just saying that in dental school, let's quit teaching them about how to run business, because it's just too much and too little, but teach them that there are career paths that are brand new. I mean, there are career paths in the last 5 years that didn't even exist. Pick one of those that works with your risk tolerance level, works with your anxiety level, works with your skill level. It has nothing to do with how good a dentist you are, but it might have to do with you do not like taking financial risk. And I promise you do not want to be an entrepreneur if you're not okay taking some financial risk. So that's what I generally speak on now. That's how I approach dental school, my dental school talks.
Very cool. So Steve, what's the future look like for you? What's the future of Profitable Dentist? What are you working on? How can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
Steve at theprofitabledentist.com. And I'm usually everywhere there and have 24 more email addresses, but theprofitabledentist.com is the easiest. Again, we're making a big transition to what we call digital first. All I'm really doing is the same thing I did in telecom, the same thing I did in power. If we keep doing the same thing, we're going to keep getting the same results. So if we want better results, we got to do something different. There's also a lot of business adages, you're going to eat or get eaten. If it ain't broke, break it, because if you don't, your competition will. I mean, there's a lot of things that basically for me are, if you want to come in and do the same thing every day, you need to be an employee. So part of what's inherent in being an entrepreneur is saying, man, I lose my butt every time I print a magazine. I'm not going to not print the magazine. One of the things I didn't want to do is watch my magazine get thinner and thinner and thinner and have less content, but more advertisers, because I need the advertisers to pay to print it and mail it. I didn't want to watch my events get smaller and smaller and smaller, lose money on every one of those because it's unpredictable who shows up or not. So we're experimenting with what we're doing next. And, we did that 30 years ago. We did the first private dental event and gave the first private CE. It used to be you could only get it from your state or from the ADA. We petitioned ADA and they said, you can't do that. And we said, why not? And again, they said, well, there's really no reason. So, and I said, right, there's no reason. So how do we work out that private organizations can give CE? So we're doing things like that. I will hand it off at some point. I've got a lot of good people. And I've been fortunate in my business life that somebody or some organization always bubbles to the top. And I would much rather build that for somebody who wants to take it over as opposed to just selling it to some big corporation that just can write a big check. And we're lucky enough, we not, everybody needs money and everybody likes money, but we're lucky enough that, I could afford, we still own dental labs. And I can tell you, there's going to come a point when we sell them and it will be employees. It won't be, and then they can do what they want with it. But, they all had a good run. Everybody a lot of people made a good living. We paid a lot of taxes here in New Albany, Indiana. And so that's what we'll do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Steve, I can't thank you enough for being on the show and sharing your story and take on this whole dental thing. Everybody's experiences are so unique, and it's cool to see as you continue to solve problems. You just documented them and basically made it massively available to other doctors, and just how it stands the test of time in terms of the docs 20 years ago that were having issues. Probably the new docs today are still having the same issues.
Same fundamental issues. They just look a little different. Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Hopefully I'll see you at an event here sooner or later.
I hope so. Yeah.
And check out Profitable Dentist if you haven't. I'll put all the links in the show description. Steve, thanks again so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Sean.